Hey guys, welcome to the Magfed Ranch Paintball channel, and today I'm going to be doing another Magfed Mondays. But as always guys, please subscribe to the channel, right? Smash that like button, and of course turn on your notification bell. I'm posting new content every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And of course in the future I am planning to post other content on other days as well too. But for now, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday guys, check it out. And of course watch the whole video and please share and comment. And share as much information as we can out there, guys. Obviously, within copyright, obviously, kind of intellectual property, that type of stuff, right? But whatever information we can share out there to help the Magfed community, obviously have better, results, better experiences with our markers, with our equipment, with our loadouts, guys. Whatever we can do to help each other out, definitely please do it. And then, of course, guys, comment. Ask questions. I love answering and obviously reacting to all your guys' questions and comments. And right now, that's going to be the best way I can do that for you guys. So please comment. Okay. All right, guys. So let's get into it. Today's Magfed Mondays, I think, is going to be potentially a controversial one. But I really thought and felt like we needed to kind of just put it out there, guys. And you guys know me. I'm not one to be shy about it. I think we should have these discussions because I think any discussion that leads to obviously a conversation and then hopefully improvement and obviously maybe get to the right people that can hear this type of stuff will help the Magfed community grow. Okay guys, and that is today's my question I would like to discuss and answer is brand loyalty hurting Magfed? And what I mean by that very specifically though, guys, but I'll kind of elaborate and kind of get into all the different other aspects of where I'm kind of going with this, is that, is being just kind of so gung-ho about one brand, right? Whether that's Tipman, First Strike, MCS, Valken, Milsig, MaxTac, all these different companies, is being super just loyal to one brand even to a fault, kind of in a way, almost kind of just glossing over their shortcomings or their issues. Is that hurting Magfed? In my personal opinion, guys, I really think it is, right? As the end consumer, I think we have a lot of influence and a lot of, in essence, pull, right? In terms of what is going to be ultimately the popular, the most used Magfed marker, and what is ultimately going to be available to us as a community, right? And so sometimes maybe just being too loyal to a fault will that hurt us, okay? And so first thing I want to discuss is kind of why sometimes we're loyal, because I think sometimes a lot of it has to do with, for lack of better words, just kind of a misunderstanding. Right? We say this all the at least I do. I'll say this all the time. I really think that a lot of these issues that we have in Magfed is just a lack of information. And that's why I got, like I said, guys, it's very important to share regardless of what the results are. Okay? And so in not any particular order, I think one of the huge components that causes this brand loyalty to a fault is cost. Okay, the cost of the marker. And guys, I'm talking about specifically about markers, right? Like the marker companies. I'm not talking about, let's say the accessories like our loadout, our vests. Because let's be honest, there's not too many vest companies out there. I know there's Whiskey 24, but for the most part, it's obviously gear that's already made by military companies or airsoft companies, right? And of course, I'm not talking about optic companies because a lot of the optics we use are going to be airsoft or, actual real steel optics, right? Besides the Supremacy scope, I can't really think of another optic out there that was designed specifically for Magfed paintball. Okay, so I'm referring specifically to the marker brands, right? The companies that build the markers, Magfed markers, okay? And where cost comes into a play is both the low cost and the high cost of the marker. I'll tackle the low cost first, right? Magfed is expensive. I'm not going to sit here and BS you guys and say that it's not an expensive sport to get into, right? You know, and so the first round of markers that came out, you know, they were in the $400 to $500 category. And this was, you know, years ago too. This was like over a decade ago. And so you can imagine with inflation, that cost was high, really high back then. And so of course I get it that, you know, people wanted a more lower affordable cost alternative option. Okay, and then, you know, we asked for it and we got it, right? We got it with the things like initially with the Milsig, right, the M17s, and then of course the Stormers, the TMC, and you know, and I remember the Hammer 7 was a very, the Spider brands of those Magfed markers were very affordable as well too back in the day. And I think where the cost comes into play is because, like, we don't want to spend the money for a good working marker, right? Especially when we're talking about first strike rounds, right? A lot of the affordable markers that they don't work with first strike rounds. And so we kind of, like I said, we kind of are loyal to a fault with the price. We're like, well, you know, I only spent $200, $300 on this marker, but it doesn't work with first strikes, right? And so we'll start saying things like, oh, well, you know, I wasn't really planning to use first strikes anyways. You know, I'm just trying to get my foot in the door. I just want to, you know, get kind of started with Magfed first, and then, you know, maybe use first strike later. Oh my God, first strike is too expensive. I wasn't going to do it anyways. But guys, let's be honest, that these things might have been true way back in the day when first strike was, you know, new and it wasn't a potential, you know, a fairly common thing. But how hard is it really nowadays to make a marker first strike compatible, right? Like, I get it. They have to come up with a new design, a new different thing, and I'm sure someone is gonna comment in the comment section like, oh my God, Tuan, you know, there's gonna be so much research and time and development they have to do to make a marker that wasn't first strike capable before capable now. But guys, think about it. There are so many markers now that are capable of first strike rounds. You're trying to tell me that you couldn't copy this design, right? I mean, look at the clips, right? They kind of used what they already had, the die-dams, right? They used that die-dam magazine and they kind of built upon that. We have a lot of 3D printing guys that built, you know, magazines, the FID magazine, right? I don't know if you guys call it FID, but the FID magazine for the EMF, right? Someone 3D printed that. You're trying to tell me that a huge company like Titman, they can't just make a new magazine design that will work well with their current lineup of markers with just slight changes and make it first strike capable? Because let's be honest too, guys, a marker that is first strike capable typically is round ball capable, meaning that it's not difficult to make a first strike marker capable of shooting round balls as well, okay? And so, and I'll give you guys a prime example, although, you know, it has its mixed reviews up there, is obviously the Valken M17, formerly Milsig, okay? That marker out of the box is great with first strike rounds, the Valken one specifically. I've talked about the Milsig issues, right, with the magazines, with the breech chamber, those type of things. I've given that information to the community. But the Valken has made those changes to improve that. And so it's going to work well with first strike rounds. As you guys know here, I don't shoot round balls, so I don't know the validity of how well it's shooting. The new Valken shoots with round ball, but I'll tell you guys right now, those markers are great out of the box with first strike rounds, okay? And so, like I said, this low cost point, it's almost kind of like us buying a cheap product, and we're like, well, I bought it because it's cheap, so I know it's not going to work with this particular feature. But guys, let's be honest, like, it's first strike round capability to me now, especially at, you know, at this point in the Magfed's progression, it's like an LED TV, LCD TV, right? It's like the technology is out there. It's been known, you can copy that technology or kind of like make your own version of the technology, and you can make your markers work and still produce a low cost marker, right? Especially, let's be honest, the reason why some of these markers are more affordable is like very similar to why the M17 is affordable, why the Stormer is affordable, why the TMC is affordable, right? One, they don't include an air tank, right? Some of them don't include the hopper adapter, like the M17, right? So you start leaving out little small features to bring that cost closer to $300, $350, right? And I get it, cost of inflation is going to go up, so these things are going to go up in general. But we're just talking about apples, relative comparisons, right? It's still going to be the more affordable markers in the market, right? And so magazine designs, for example, the follower, guys, I've talked about this in many videos, right? It's fairly common knowledge now that the follower has to be kind of this cup shape, U shape, so that way the first strike round sits in there correctly, and so that it prevents it from flipping. And then also it allows it to feed, at the right angle and properly up into the chamber. Okay, so it's like this information is out there. It wouldn't take much for these manufacturers to kind of make their own designs. I mean, shit, Tippmann had a TCR that used that same followers, right? Their long-range conversion kit magazines use that follower design. You trying to tell me they couldn't make TMC magazines or Stormer magazines that would follow that as well? Okay, guys, so that's kind of the cheap aspect. Now, the expensive aspect, right? Because it has kind of both its own little issues, but it kind of leads to the same thing, which is, lack of development, right? And so with the cheap markers, we kind of give the manufacturer out. We're like, oh, hey, thank you so much for just giving us a cheap marker that we can get into Magfed with. And, oh, well, when we want to go play with first strike rounds, we got to literally either go buy, a new marker completely for another $500, $600, or we're going to have to go convert it, with some type of conversion kit that you guys don't even offer, right? The manufacturer doesn't even offer the conversion kit. I got to get it from some third party 3D printed, doesn't come with any type of warranty. And of course I have to use some other brand's magazine that's not even designed for my marker. Anyways, now the expensive option, right? Let's say you start getting into, even kind of quote unquote your mid-tier expensive, like the T15 or the EMF, right? But then you start getting into some of the even more expensive markers like the CCM or the SAR-12 or some of the custom markers out there. And I feel like when when we as Magfed players buy the most expensive marker, it's almost kind of like we want it to work so bad that we kind of forget all the issues that we ran into with the marker. And I'll give you guys a very good example. Like I said, I'll be the first one here to admit it on camera and to the community. I've done this myself. I've told you guys all my issues with the 468. I've showed you guys my issues with the Milsig Paradigm Pro, right? All those markers I bought were close to $500 back in the day with all the magazines and and the options that were available for those markers, and so they were not affordable marker. They weren't cheap markers back in the day. And so it's you spend all this money and you were touted, right? You were sold that it was going to work with first strike rounds and it was going to be reliable and it was going to do this and going to do that. And that when it doesn't happen and you start experiencing these faults, it's almost kind of I hate to say it, but it's almost kind of you're embarrassed to admit that, hey, I bought something and I was kind of cheated out, right? I was kind of, for lack of better words, not given what I bought. I was kind of bamboozled a little bit, right? I spent all this money and now I have a product that doesn't work really well. And instead of kind of letting the rest of the community know, right? Let everyone else know, it's kind of well, I got screwed over, so you know what? I'm embarrassed. I'm gonna kind of let everyone else get screwed over as well too, right? And I get it, guys. There's phases, right? There's this phase where you're cool with the company, especially if they have good customer service, guys. For the most part, MCS has great customer service, right? They respond really quick. They process your orders really quick. And other companies that I've dealt with in terms of like Magfed retailers, they've been really helpful as well too. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the product doesn't work, or it doesn't work to the extent that it was touted that it was going to work. And so, you give them the benefit of the doubt, right? You spend all this money with them, it's like, oh hey, I'm gonna try to make it work, right? So you start tinkering with the marker, you try trying all these different things that maybe even the company suggests you to do, and then you just kind of try your best to go through all of it. And during this time that you're trying, of course, it's just common sense that you're not gonna diss them yet until it absolutely fails, right? You're gonna kind of give them this process of trying it out to see if you can get it to work. But let's be honest, guys, this could take months, this could take years. And then when it ultimately doesn't work, it's kind of like you're so done with the marker that you just want to move on to something else completely. And at that point, it's like you don't even want to bash the marker anymore. It's like you just kind of like, oh man, I'm done with this. I don't even want to discuss the marker anymore, right? But like I said, I think that's a disservice to our community, because we're letting everyone else that's coming after us, a bad experience as well. So I think what we should do is at least, if we're not going to just, and like I said, we need to give the manufacturers a fair shot. I get there's levels to this, guys, right? Like it's like, hey, if it's user error, if it's something else that maybe you didn't do, but let's be honest, guys, like a lot of the markers that have bad reputations for not working as such, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a reason why it didn't work. And like I said, I've showcased you guys that information, so it's not like I'm just saying, oh my God, it doesn't work because it doesn't work, right? I've given you guys evidence in our videos of why it doesn't work. Whether it's the magazine design, the imperfections in the magazine, the way they made it, right, manufactured, the chamber design, right? Just the inherent flaws in the type of the system that the marker was designed after, whether that was a spider or a heat core, right? All these different markers are a mechanical device, right? An engineered device. There's always going to be some type of compromise with any machine, with any device, with anything that is engineered, right? It's going to work in one area, but then not work somewhere else area. It's going to be good at this, but then not going to be good at that, right? And so, yeah, so when it comes to the high cost, right, it's like we almost kind of like I said, we're embarrassed to tell people that we spent all this money on a product that doesn't work too well. Okay, guys? Okay, and then I would say, besides costs, right, there's kind of this stubbornness, right, with our attitudes when it comes to Magfed players, right? Especially once we get it to work well, right? So let's say, you have a marker that maybe wasn't the most reliable, but then you start figuring it out. Like, like we've showcased, right? The T15 has its quirks, the M17 has its quirks. Those are the two platforms that we build here specifically on Magfed Ranch, because we like the way they you can make real looking clone type of markers out of, right? But at least, here, I tell you guys objectively what is wrong or what is right with the marker, right? What it does well versus what it doesn't do well, right? But I think a lot of us, like, we get it to work, and then we just kind of, like I said, same thing with kind of the cheap crowd. We're just like, oh, well, we got it to work, so hey, all you have to do is just do these things to get it to work. But the question begs, once again, why do we need to do it, right? Isn't that ultimately the manufacturer's responsibility to try to help us fix these problems? And that's the key word, is help us fix these problems, right? We're being used, right? The Magfed players and Magfed community who really puts time and investment and money into this. I mean, I'll tell you guys, I spent more than I like to say and like to admit, and I'm sure a lot of you out there that have multiple markers, multiple builds, have tried all the different markers to see what works and what doesn't, have spent thousands of dollars as well. Why are we the test bed, right? Why are we the test dummies, for lack of better words, for their products? And if we are, okay, then why are they not helping us to improve their products with our feedback? And like I said, one of it has to do with the lack of us communicating that to them. Okay, guys, like, we need to step up as a community and let the manufacturers know what we're experiencing wrong. So that way, if they're a good company and they want their product to sell and improve and hopefully, get better and sell different generations of it and maybe come up with different designs, different markers, you would think that they would want to hear our feedback and improve upon those different things. And also look at different designs, right? I mean, I'll give you guys an example. At one time, people laughed at plastic handguns, right? Plastic guns, right? Until Glock came out. And now pretty much every manufacturer has a version of a plastic pistol, right? And so, that information is out there for Magfed markers, right? We can use the efficiency of one marker design with the magazines, kind of designs like that we know is reliable with from another marker design, and kind of combine it together to make this ultimate design, right? I'm sure that's how a lot of products are made. It's like, oh, well, this manufacturer does this well, this manufacturer does this well, this manufacturer does this well. Let's look at what they do well in terms of the designs and incorporate that into a marker design, and it should relatively work well, right? That makes sense to me on why we can do that. Okay. The other thing I was going to say, that kind of affects the whole loyalty aspect, right? Is that we go about not really testing these things, right? We kind of say it worked well with one thing, and then we obviously just say, okay, well, hey, it worked well with this one thing. I'm going to put my seal of approval on it. Right? And so it's kind of like, I guess, for lack of better words, we don't really invest much time into really proving whether this works or not. And we don't really have a very high standard of which it worked well or not. Like I said, I'll give you guys my prime examples because I've been at fault of this myself, right? When we first tested the 4.68 with first strike rounds, we were touting how it worked well with first strike rounds. But the honest truth, guys, is that it only worked really well during practice. It only worked well during testing. And like I was telling you guys, when we actually went to an event or when we went to our local field to play against speedballers, right, and just normal woods ball players, we had so many issues. And so that's why we ultimately switched to a new marker, right? But we didn't let the rest of the community know. We didn't let, the manufacturers really know, right? Like, I mentioned it to MCS, but I didn't really emphasize it as much as I should. And let's be honest too, like I said, it's a two-way street. They gave me the things to try out, right? Like the different bolts, the different springs in the magazines. But guys, none of that stuff worked. And then after a while, it was just kind of like, like I said, it was just kind of like, let's just forget it, like I don't want to deal with them anymore because it doesn't work. And, some people could fault that, right? It's like, man, you're so fed up with a product, let's let go, let's walk away. But at least we have to try to share this information. And so that's what I'm trying to do with you guys, as much as I can, is share this information, because I think this, and this is where I'm going to get into next, is this lack of information, which leads to kind of this loyalty mindset, is really what's hurting Magfed, right? Because I really think that there's a lack of information, which is causing misinformation. Okay, and I'll give you guys some prime examples, and not in any particular order. For example, the outdated generations versus the newer generations, right? And rightfully so. Like I said, the manufacturers are not doing their part, right? So you have a lot of early generation T15s, for example, that weren't very reliable. They had their quirks, more so than the newer generations. Their magazines weren't as well as the new magazines, hence they went to a new generation of markers, right? I think they're on their Gen 5 already, and of course they're on their version 2 of their magazines already. And so when people are like stating sometimes that it was unreliable, they're talking about earlier generation markers and the magazines associated with that marker. Same thing with the M17, right? I told you guys already like all the issues with the earlier mill SIGs. And so when you're comparing the old school generations with the new school generations, that kind of lack, you associate both the same when it's not the case. I'll tell you guys right now, all of our marker bills that we've used with the newest generation T15s and M17s from Vulcan, they are really reliable with first strike rounds. I mentioned some of the shorter magazine flaws, but I've given you guys the fixes out there to fix them to make them way more reliable. I will say right now, in my testing, I've seen like a 90 or above % reliable rate with first strike rounds. Now, once again, I don't know about round ball, guys. I'm not a round ball proponent and user, but with first strike rounds, these markers are highly reliable, if not closer to like 95% or above. Now, talking about the T15, right? Even with the generation changes, I've mentioned this before, their follower design in the new magazines, it still hasn't been updated. It's still a round ball, right? Meant for round ball paint, right? They should go about and update that design to the correct first strike follower. And as you guys can see, I mean, even with the EMF having that design, it still works with round ball, right? So the first strike design systems will still work with round ball. And so how hard is it to just produce another follower design? Okay, and so it's like this kind of lack of information comparing older generations, without the improvements to the newer generations. It hurts the outcome of people thinking one marker is more reliable or another. And then the lack of information, like I was saying with you guys, as far as how we share it as a community, right? There's so many people that don't understand that certain markers work really well, and they don't know. They're just comparing it to their own experience or a past bad experience, which was justifiable. I'm not saying it isn't, right? Because if you had one of those older designs and it didn't work for you, you're just saying, hey, these markers suck. And I've had other buddies who had it. Just like I said, guys, our whole team had 468s, and they didn't work at all with freaking first strike rounds, right? Our whole team had Milsig Paradigm Pros, and they only worked so-so with first strike rounds, okay? And so, so when you have a whole group experience like that, and everyone's buying $400, $500, per marker, and it doesn't work for you, you're gonna talk crap about a brand. But my point is, why didn't we talk bad enough about it to the manufacturer to get them to improve the product? And if we did, then we need to let other people know as much as we can then, in terms of getting, so that way they do the thing that will really hurt, per se, make the manufacturer change their mind, which is don't buy their product, right? But like I said, guys, there's kind of this lack of information. And then also sometimes it's just kind of not misinformation intentional, but it's also kind of like mix of information, right? And I'll give you guys a prime example. For example, like, the M17. There's a lot of information out there that says, well, it works really well with round ball. It works really well with first strike rounds, but it doesn't really work with round ball. Is that true? Do we actually have a lot? I mean, is there 100% continuous tests that, and is this the Milsig old school design? Is it the M5 CQMF? Is it the M17? Was it the older generation Milsig with the round collars, right? Before they switched to the square collars? You see what I'm saying, getting guys? Is it a very specific reason why it didn't work with round ball? Or is it just because of this one particular marker design? And so then we just encompass it to the whole lineup, right? I remember someone stating on a post that the Nemesis barrels don't really work well, right? For the SAR, right? But then someone else is saying, oh, the best accuracy is to use the Nemesis barrel with the nips tips. And then, like, guys, I've seen the test results. I've read the SAR reports, right? The Carbon Tech reports on their accuracy. And I'm telling you guys right now, their accuracy reports aren't much better, if not the same, as my results that I'm getting with our Magfed Ranch clone markers, you know, with the hammerhead barrels and the dialed in match grade ammo. And so, is it really that much better? Or is it comparable once you get kind of everything dialed in the way it's supposed to be, right? Tune your marker correctly, like any other marker, right? I mean, we talk about old school paintball markers, right? You want to match, you know, bore match the paint. You want to have a good efficiency marker, right? You want to have a good air source. You know, all those little things that's going to increase the performance of your marker. Well, it's the same with Magfed, right? Putting your marker together right, making sure the O-rings are lubed, making sure everything is assembled correctly, torqued, Loctited correctly, zeroed in, match grade rounds correctly, right? Using the right magazines or modifying the magazines correctly. So it's kind of like all this lack of information and then kind of mix of information is causing this misinformation that's really, you know, not helping the Magfed community grow. Okay, guys. So hey, guys, that's it. You know, let's this video was just about, hey, let's not be loyal to one brand, right? I get it. We use particular brands here because we like the way the builds look. Full disclosure, guys, I have nothing against the EMF. I've heard great reviews of it, but my issue with it is just the way it looks. And I'll be super honest with you guys about that. That's just my objective opinion of why we don't build those markers. You know, and I get it, there's kits out there to make them look more realistic, but you know, we love making clone markers that look like the real steel rifles, clone rifles that our military use, and the EMF doesn't follow that. But I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh, the EMF is not a good Magfed marker, or that it doesn't work well so-and-so, or it has these issues, because I have no experience with it, guys. And then same thing with like the TMC or the Stormer, right? I'm not building those markers because they're not first strike capable. And so I'm a first strike round proponent. And so, you know, I'm not going to say something bad about a product or even good about a product that I have no experience in. And then with the products I do have experience in, right, the platforms, the T15, the M17, and the 468, I've given you guys that information, good and bad, right? I've said crap about the M17 or T15, the followers, right, the heat core leak, right? And I've given you guys that information, and it's funny that I hear people trying to kind of like debate me, I guess, for lack of better words, or argue back with me on these points, but it's like they don't present any evidence to counteract, you know, refute my evidence that I'm showing out to the community, right? If you have evidence out there that proves otherwise, that those issues are fixed or whatever, put it out there. I'll be the first to admit that, oh, hey, I'm wrong. I need to do it. You know, it was something I didn't know, right? But I have yet to see it. And so let's be objective, guys, moving forward. That's the whole key, right? Let's help the community by being objective. Let's not be so brand loyal that we get blinded and obviously embarrassed in putting out the right information so we can help this community grow. Okay, guys, that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much. Love you guys. Talk to you guys next time. Peace.